Today, now that we know how to write numbers in scientific notation, we can actually do math with numbers written in scientific notation. Let's take a look. Multiplying and dividing numbers in scientific notation. Our two learning targets. First one, I can multiply numbers given in scientific notation. And our second learning target, I can divide numbers given in scientific notation. So let's start with multiplying numbers in scientific notation. We have this example, multiply. 4.5 times 10 to the third times 1.23 times 10 to the second. So we have to take these in steps. Our very first step, we need to start by multiplying the coefficients. So if you remember, coefficients are the numbers in front here. So 4.5 and 1.23. So we're going to color code these so you know these are both in the red. We'll go with our coefficients. We're going to multiply 4.5 times 1.23. When we do that, we get 5.535. And if you wanted to use Desmos calculator or a calculator at home, either one is fine. If you're looking for the Desmos calculator, let me show you. I did bring it up prior to this. It's desmos.com/scientific. Even if you just want to Google Desmos Scientific, it'll come up. So you could use this calculator. It has everything that you would possibly need on it. So let's get back to our lesson. So when we multiply our coefficients, we said 4.5 times 1.23 equals 5.535. The next thing that we need to do is multiply the powers of 10. And if you remember, when we're looking at our powers of 10, we have 10 to the third and 10 to the second. Notice their color code. They're yellow. They're going to go with the yellow down here. So when we're multiplying exponents, what we need to do, or when we're multiplying powers of 10, we need to keep the base of 10 and then add our exponents. So in this case, our exponent was 3 and our exponent was 2. So we're going to add those together. 3 plus 2 is 5. And our very last step is just we put the pieces together. We're going to combine the 5.535 and the 10 to the 5th power. Now, this is how it would look. 5.535 times 10 to the 5th. And we're finished. This is in scientific notation. We always got to make sure if it's in proper form to make sure that our number in front is between 1 and 10. It has to be less than 10, so it has to be a one-digit number here. This number is written correctly in scientific notation, so you're done. So another example, 3.11 times 10 to the negative 8th times 2.7 times 10 to the 4th. So let's multiply our coefficients first. So we're going to multiply 3.11 times 2.7. And when we do that, we get 8.397. Our next step is we need to multiply the powers of 10. So we have 10 to the negative 8th times 10 to the 4th. Be careful with the negative. So when we do that, there's our coefficients. I'm sorry, those are our exponents. We need to keep the base and add the exponents. So we'll keep the base of 10, and we're going to add our exponents. Negative 8 plus 4. We have opposite signs, so we're going to subtract. 8 minus 4 is 4, and we're going to keep the one that has the biggest sign. 8 is biggest. 8's bigger than 4, and it's negative, so our answer is negative. Or if you just want to type this in your calculator, negative 8 plus 4 equals negative 4. And lastly, we're going to put the pieces together by saying 8.397 times 10 to the negative 4th. Pretty easy. All right, so and this number is written in the proper form for scientific notation, so we're done. Here's another example. 5.4 times 10 to the 7th times 4.21 times 10 to the negative 2nd. Let's start by multiplying the coefficients. So our coefficients are 5.4 and 4.21. Multiply those together, and we get 22.734. Next step, we'll multiply the powers of 10. So let's look at our powers of 10. We're 10 to the 7th and 10 to the negative 7th. Remember our rule? To multiply powers of 10, we need to keep the base of 10 and add our exponents. So it's going to be 7 plus negative 2, which would be 5. Last thing, let's put it all together. We get 22.734 times 10 to the 5th. But wait a second. This example is not quite right. What we need to do is not written correctly. We need to move the decimal and change the exponent. This 22 is too large. We need to be a single digit, so I need to move my decimal one place to the left. And when we move our decimal, it's going to change our exponent. So let's do that. Let's move it one to the left. So now it becomes 2.2734. And since we moved it one to the left, we need to add 1 to the exponent, since I moved it only one place. So remember Lars. We talked about it in past lessons. We move the decimal one left, so we add 1 to the exponent. So L stands for left, A stands for add. If we would have went to the right, that's what R stands for, and the S stands for subtract. So if we move left, we add. If we move right, we subtract. In this case, we moved left, so we add. So now let's try dividing in scientific notation. So we have this example, 7.595 times 10 to the 11th divided by 2.45 times 10 to the 7th. So very similar what we did for multiplying, but this time we're just going to divide. So we're going to start by dividing our coefficients. Our coefficients are the numbers in front. So we're going to divide 7.595 divided by 2.45. When we divide that, we get 3.1. Our next thing we need to do is we need to divide the powers of 10. Our powers of 10 are 10 to the 11th and 10 to the 7th. Remember our rule, when we divide powers of 10, we need to keep the base of 10 and then subtract our exponents. So we kept our base of 10, we went 11 minus 7 is 4. Lastly, we need to put the pieces together. We're going to combine those, so it's going to be 3.1 times 10 to the 4th. We look at it to see if it is in the correct scientific notation form. It is. So notice that our final answer uses the multiplication sign as well. So even if we're dividing, to be in scientific notation, we always say times. We always have a multiplication sign. So this number is written correctly in scientific notation, so we are finished. So another example, 4.521 times 10 to the 3rd divided by 1.1 times 10 to the 9th. So our first step, divide by the coefficients, the numbers in front. So we're dividing 4.521 divided by 1.1, which equals 4.11. Next step, we're going to look at our powers of 10. We're going to divide them. So if you remember how we do our powers of 10, we keep the base but subtract our exponents when we're dividing powers of 10. So it's going to be 3 minus 9. If you type that in your calculator, you're going to get negative 6. Or you could, being that they're opposites, 3 minus 9, we're going to subtract. 9 minus 3 is 6, and there's more negatives. 9's bigger, and that's negative, so we keep the sign of negative. And lastly, we're going to combine our pieces together, 4.11 and 10 to the negative 6. So it would look like 4.11 times 10 to the negative 6. Notice that multiplication sign. To be in scientific notation, at the very end, we need a multiplication sign there. And this one is written correctly in scientific notation. So we're finished. Next problem, 1.5 times 10 to the negative 8th times 6 times 10 to the 7th. So 1.5 times 10 to the negative 8 divided by 6 times 10 to the 7th. Start by dividing our coefficients. Those are the number in front. So we're going to divide 1.5 divided by 6, and we get 0.25. Next thing, we'll divide the powers of 10. Our powers of 10 are 10 to the negative 8th and 10 to the 7th. And remember, when we're dividing Powers of 10, we have to subtract our exponents. So we keep our base of 10, subtract our exponents. Negative 8 minus 7 is negative 15. Last step is combining everything, combining our pieces together. So we're going to combine 0.25 and 10 to the negative 15th into scientific notation. But we should notice that this is not in correct form. We should see that this is too small. We need to have a number here that's between 1 and 10, and less than 10. So we need to move our decimal 1 to the right. So we move the decimal 1 to the right, so it's now 2.5 times 10 to the negative 15. When we moved it one place to the right, we need to subtract our exponent. So we're at negative 15. We subtract 1 because we only moved it one place value. Negative 15 minus 1 is negative 16. Don't be afraid to use your calculator on that. So our answer would be 2.5 times 10 to the negative 16th. This indeed is in proper form for scientific notation. I'll remind you again what Lars mean. If we moved our decimal left, we would add to our exponent the number of places. If we moved it right, our decimal right, in this case we did, we are going to subtract, that's the S, subtract the number of movements that we did. So we moved it once, we have to subtract 1 in this example. So remember that acronym LARS. So how do we know if I should multiply or divide? So when we're looking at these two examples, 4.5 times 10 to the third times 1.23 times 10 to the 8th, that's our first example, and 5.2 times 10 to the 11th divided by 1.3 times 10 to the 7th. How do we know when we have to multiply or divide? Pay attention to the sign between the two sets of numbers. This will tell you if you have to multiply or divide. So we're looking at this multiplication sign or this division sign. Whether you're multiplying or dividing, all final answers should be written with a multiplication sign between the coefficient and the power of 10 because that's the format of scientific notation. So if we had our two examples, what we just mentioned, it comes out to be 5.535 times 10 to the 11th, and our other one is 4 times 10 to the 4th, and these are incorrect scientific notation. So that's it for today. So we want you to head on over to Schoology to complete today's practice. Reach out to your teacher if you need any additional help.